All right, greetings everyone. This is Chris Dixon, and I am back with another video and discussion. And on this particular video, I will be building with you all on the left-hand path, also known as the Luciferian path. And pretty much, I want to share my personal experiences being on this path myself and how it has impacted my spiritual journey and development, um, so to speak. And I also want to clear up some misconceptions and misunderstandings that a lot of people have um, concerning this particular path, so to speak. And I'm going to also share with you all some good information from Michael W. Ford's book, The Necromenon, Egyptian Satanic Magic. Good book to have on Egyptian magic, also known as Egyptian Heka and the left-hand path. All right. The word Heka is another word for magic in ancient Egypt. All right. So the Luciferian path, satanic magic, dealing with the archetype of Set from the ancient Egyptian pantheon, um, the path of the adversary, so forth and so forth. This is a very challenging path. Um, it's definitely going to challenge you mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. And you definitely have to be built to be on the left hand path. It's a path of uh, self mastery and gaining control over your internal flaws, fears, weaknesses, and things of that nature, and integrating your shadow self with your light side, so to speak. So integrating the darkness and the light that's within you, all right, and integrating them together as one, um, which brings forth internal balance, so to speak. So a lot of people, when they hear the terms left hand path, black magic, Luciferian, uh, these particular terms, people get the impression that is a dark and sinister path that is based around devil worship, and that is far from the truth. This is a path of, um, like I said, gaining mastery over self and taking self accountability for the good, the bad, and the ugly, okay, um, within your life, all right, and embracing it all, so to speak. So, the concept of the left hand path, and of course, you also have um, the concept of the right hand path. And both of these concepts originated in the East, okay, with the Hindus. And they established these concepts to distinguish um, which type of spiritual path an individual was on and how they connected to the divine, okay? The right hand path focuses more on an outward journey in um, worship, uh, morality, and just submitting your inner divinity away, so to speak. So somewhat, seen as a path of, servitude, so to speak. Compared to the left-hand path is the inward journey um, out, all right? So it's the path of self-deification, okay? Um, the path of becoming your own God or goddess or divine being in your own dynamic right, okay? So the left-hand path does not embrace any external worship, servitude, or things of that nature, all right? Um, it is a path of going against the norm. Okay, so non-conformity. You're not just doing what you're told to do because the government said so, or things of that nature. So pretty much you're becoming a much more independent thinker. Okay, you're thinking for yourself. Um, you're deprogramming yourself of the mental indoctrination of religion and just overall what society has conditioned you with to believe about yourself. All right. So both paths are different. Okay. Um, there are people that are called to be on the right hand path, which is connected with the world's major religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, um, Buddhism, etc. Um, and I grew up, in Christianity, so I was raised in, right hand path, way of thinking and philosophy. And I struggled, to understand who and what I am. Um, and I didn't have any true self awareness of self. Okay. Um, I was always blaming, the devil, is what they teach you, in these systems. There's always someone else that's responsible for your problems and challenges that you face, i.e., the devil or the enemy, so to speak. So being taught that there is an external enemy, okay, so not really having, the awareness that I'm creating 90 to 95% of my issues, okay? Most of your issues are self-imposed, okay? 90 to 95% of them, okay? But the right hand path systems don't really emphasize self accountability, okay? Uh, so pretty much you dwell in ignorance, and that's what leads to, suffering, okay? You're also taught that someone else is responsible for your successes, okay? I.e., this sky daddy god, that's up in the clouds in this mystical place called heaven that's aeons of miles away. Um, and you have to come to him in submission and servitude. And he's the one that's responsible for all your successes. So you're not taught to even take ownership for your successes. So the right hand path, systems don't really emphasize a lot um, on personal, self empowerment. Okay. The left hand path, emphasizes full ownership of your reality, your successes and your failures, okay? Or the good, the bad, and the ugly, all right? So this path is very challenging to those that are not ready to take self accountability for their life, the choices they make, and things of that nature. Um, it's definitely not a path for those that do not seek to be challenged, okay? Um, so if you want to be comfortable and secure, the left hand path is not for you, okay? And that's okay. The right hand path, there are people that are supposed to be on that particular path, okay? On the flip side of the coin, there are those that are supposed to be on the left hand path, all right? People that have made the internal decision to face themselves and embrace the unknown, okay? And the unknown being the parts of yourself that you have repressed and that you haven't, you know, really explored, okay? So it's the path of uncertainty. It's going to be a lot of uncertainty that you're going to experience, different situations and experiences, that's going to come about to teach you lessons, okay, so that you can grow and deeper knowledge and wisdom and understanding of yourself. So you're going to have dreams, things and visions that you experience, during meditation. It's going to be very complex. And I can bear witness, I've had tons of challenges that I've had to work through on this path. Being on it 9 years now. And I must say that it's been very challenging, but also very interesting at the same time. I've also developed the knowledge of self that I've always needed, and the self-awareness, okay, of myself, to really deal with my internal struggles and weaknesses the way that I need to, so to speak. Um, so it's not to knock the right hand path. It all serves its purpose. I grew up in it, and it served its purpose for my journey. So it was time to embark on a new path that was conducive, for me. Okay, and that's what I did. So yes, I've experienced relationship changes, growing apart from lifelong relationships, from childhood, uh, and really has taught me patience and, to get comfortable, with solitude. You know what I'm saying? I've always been, pretty comfortable with solitude, but you're definitely going to go through different experiences where you're just going to be lonely and by yourself a lot. And that is where the real you is going to come out. It's you uh, versus you at the end of the day. And this path is going to put you on um, that particular course of really getting to know yourself. Okay. So, expect these things, when you embark on this path, but you will gain, a lot of knowledge of self and profound wisdom. Okay. And it's definitely going to take you to places that you never would have even dreamed or expected. Okay. So trust the process. That's what I'm doing. I'm taking it one day at a time as usual. And, just staying in my studies, staying in my spiritual work, and just continuing forward. That's what you have to do. All right. Uh, so let's get into this particular book um, very briefly. And I'm not going to be long. I just want to go into the introduction of Egyptian magic and Luciferianism. Luciferianism, as firstly an ideology, has its roots in antiquity, specifically from pre-Christian pantheons and religious structure. Luciferianism utilizes a mutual blend of both science and a structure of ideological principles which denote the use on the superficial level to be quote unquote satanic, yet in a deeper understanding, the adversarial concept holds a balanced perception of life and death. All right. And that's what the term, Satan simply means. It just means adversary. Okay. So this path is also labeled the adversarial path um, because to a degree you are rebelling, against the established norm, the mind control and mental indoctrination of religion to get your spiritual sovereignty back. Okay. So it is the path of the adversary. It's not, the path of where you rebel against uh, every single thing out here. Like you go out here and you just start doing a whole bunch of crazy stuff um, and end up, in jail or something of that nature. That's not what this path is teaching you to do. This path does instill dignity and honor, respect, for other people, um, respect, for your job, and and things of that nature. Um, but it's also teaching you to develop that sovereignty within yourself. Okay. Um, so a lot of people will start to want to work for themselves. Things will get very challenging, at your job. You get kind of, you know, um, you don't really desire to be working for somebody anymore. These types of emotions start to kick in. Okay. So you start to want to do, your own thing, create your own system, that is based around your own sovereignty, you know. So that's what this path is emphasizing, okay, when it refers to the adversary, okay. So in this particular system, Lucifer is seen as one of the primary archetypes, okay. But Lucifer, Set from ancient Egypt, okay, Set being the original prototype uh, for the adversary of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Okay, at first it was Set or Set Typhon, okay, of ancient Egypt, and Lucifer and Shaitan in Islam. All of them represent the same, you know, energy or archetypal force. Okay, so that's why it's called Luciferian, satanic magic. Okay, because they're pretty much the same archetype. Okay. Firstly, the archetype of Lucifer as the light bringer. Okay, and the spiritual rebel against monotheistic religion, specifically in contrast to the Judeo-Christian Yahweh, nearly the only deific mask not recognized in the spiritual ceremony and initiation within the adversarial current. The image of the bringer of light in Western symbolism in our current age blends the New Testament symbol of the devil, the tempter and representation of the old gods demoted to an evil spirit, embodying the traits of the Hellenistic period, that is, traits found in the cult of the hero, the demigod attaining earthly victory against obstacles. In turn, John Milton's Satan, with his heroic traits and symbolism, reflected the Hellenic cult of polytheism and the acceptance of self accountability without adopting the slave mentality of the cult of Yahweh and Jesus. Lucifer, in a modern perception, is the one who brings knowledge and a potential of power, a source of inner light, yet with a symbolic cloak or shadowy darkness. Okay? The adversary is not recognized in the structure of nature and humanity. As the destroyer, the satanic or Luciferian spirit is centered on traits of self love, accountability for one's actions, achieving earthly wisdom and power, and the instinct towards accomplishment. Thus, the adversary is both light and dark. Balance is essential in nature and reflected in humanity. Duality does not exist in the material world. Nothing is completely destructive or creative as it would, by definition, undo and cease to exist. When something destroys, creation occurs in line with the structure of the laws of nature. The gods and demons, or daemons, while recognized perhaps as literal conscious beings in antiquity, are by Luciferians understood as representations of a specific type of power inherent in both nature and the human being. No longer do we recognize the Judeo-Christian perception of the conscious creating God, but the sober understanding that the individual, the very vessel for which the gods manifest and are identified with, is alone and responsible for his or her path in this life. All right. So Lucifer is seen as the archetype of spiritual illumination, okay, um, which is developed as you gain mastery of self, okay, and you start to realize that you are in control of your spiritual sovereignty, okay. Um, no one else on an external level is, okay. So when it comes down to working with spirits and deities, um, the left hand path, um, or Luciferian path, we embody what they represent. Okay, so we become the actual deity, okay, and embody their characteristics and attributes into our own self, so to speak. So that's what's known as putting on the deific mask, okay. We don't make ourselves inferior to any deity or spirits, okay. We see ourselves as them, okay, because we are them and they are us, all right. They exist inside of us, all right, and we walk in consort with them and work in consort with them side by side, all right. That's the difference between the left hand path and the right hand path. The left hand path, you're working in consort side by side with deities and spirits. You're not making yourself inferior to them, okay. So that's why we don't worship anything external on this path, all right. We embrace it, we become it, all right. Pre-Christian religions, which present the pantheons of cultures such as the ancient Egyptians, Canaanites, Mesopotamians, Persians, Greeks, and the ancient Near East, all are utilized beyond the Luciferian ideology via an initiatory process called magic. As one utilizes the ideology of Luciferianism, if one decides to dedicate the one's self to initiation, will use what I define as deific mask and the spiritual rituals of initiation. Luciferians do not attempt to resurrect ancient pantheons in their former structure. We simply use the gods and demons as tools or masks representing specific types of power recognized in both nature and the human being. Um, and like I just said, the deities, they represent archetypal energy that's within your subconscious mind, okay? So that's where they exist at. And you're embodying the energy that's already within you. All right. The practices of the ancient cults and pantheons within a modern Luciferian interpretation is valid in a modern context. When you burn incense to a deific mask, offer libation and hymns and ritual, you are honoring that symbol of power based on your purpose, thus respectful love for that within yourself. Rituals are to achieve control over powers in this material world, and basic by attempting willed control over the spiritual and mental planes of being. In science, the brain is recognized as being composed of billions of brain cells known as neurons. Neurons use electricity to communicate to each other. Millions of signals are sent by neurons at once and create a significant amount of electricity. The energy they create is recognized as brainwave patterns, which may be measured by medical tests with sensors placed on the scalp. This energy flows in waves, and each focused thought creates the energy in which thoughts can create a reaction in the physical world. Consider that if we directed our thoughts, including our perception, the point of view or way of understanding, that is, our directed desired outcome, which is desire and the visual steps of progress towards goals, and to use the imagination to believe, which you imagine feeling the success in a disciplined, energy focused way. The gods and demons are tools in this process, yet our success is therefore an honor to them. When we invoke a deific mask, the power it represents allows it to be symbolically manifest in the form of a statue, art, or mental image. All right. So that is why, statues and images of deities and spirits exist. Okay. They don't exist well, they were not made to be worshiped. Okay. They were made to represent a symbolic um, archetypal energy that's within your subconscious mind. Okay. So pretty much they serve as a focal point. Okay. On what to become. Okay. As you work with them. All right. So you are embodying, like I said, what they represent. Okay. For your spiritual evolution. All right. And transformation. So that's what they symbolize in physical representations. All right. Secondly, the archetype of Lucifer has deep symbolism within nearly all of the ancient pantheons of the ancient Near East. The deific mask has deep symbolism which the unconscious mind may tap into and utilize the energy which it manifests in the mind. In turn, the mental energy thus connects by sending out this power and slowly shaping the material world in which we exist physically to arrange according to the level of energy. This experience of initiation, which is to gain experience and knowledge, brings wisdom, which is by knowledge being applied in our mental perception of such, and power, which is control or goal achievement. The wisdom and power, in turn, is made greater over time by conscious practice and increase of experience. This is magic in the literal sense. The mind can create over time and based on imagination an idealized perception of the next stage of our evolution. That is a type of personal god or goddess, which, if you illustrated, the picture of it would be a mythological portrait of yourself in the context of a spiritual being, literally the daemon or agathodaimon. All right. And the term daemon is where um, the term demon itself comes from. Okay. The term daemon is the original Greek term, and it means a guiding spirit. All right. Um, so the agathodaimon um, was seen by the early Greeks as one's higher self. Okay. The agathodaimon was a benevolent um, spirit that guides an individual on their journey of life. Okay. And of course, there were, malevolent daemons in early Greek and Egyptian terminology, and they were known as the kako daemon. Okay. A malevolent spirit. Okay. Uh, but the agatho daemon was seen as a benevolent spirit, and it usually served as a person's higher self. Okay. So uh, that's pretty much what you are connecting with, which is your true self on the left hand path or the Luciferian path. You're connecting with your inner daemon. Okay. Spelled Daemon. Okay, not Demon. So you're connecting with your true self. All right. The agatho daemon, so to speak. By initiation and magical practice, the true will or idolized self and perpetual excellence is our daemonic personal God. As its power expands and the energy in turn activates our close connection with instinct and will. So our psyche grows closer to this aspect of our true will. The Black Adept may use any pantheon and the structure I outlined in my grimoires to establish this practice and initiation. Over time and depending on the deific mask in which you utilize, the daemon will be imagined in your mind to appear within the symbolism to some extent of the deific mask. you connect with. The daemon may be illustrated with a structure of your facial features as well as idolized um, and symbolic, theromorphic, and anthropomorphic features. The satanic cult of mask is one of the more intense structures of Hermetic Luciferian magic. Egyptian magic itself is deeply symbolic, and myth, merged with natural experience, are seemingly at one with each other. The Egyptians perceived that every act was ritual and deeply symbolic. The way in which the pharaoh dressed himself in robes, um, aegis, headdress, or crown, and the weapons or was scepters held had a process and purpose. The modern Black adept should seek to understand and grow comfortable with the purpose of symbol and the magical initiation of ceremony. So, headdresses, crowns, and robes, and things of that nature were seen as symbolic tools, okay, to help the adept, connect with their higher self. Okay, so all of these physical things that we use on this path are symbolic. Okay, they're not to be worshipped or anything like that. Okay, they're seen as symbolic tools that you can utilize as you connect with your higher self or your inner daemon, so to speak. So this is the path of the Luciferian or the left-hand path occultist. Okay, um, this is not a evil or sinister path at all. Okay, it's very misunderstood due to the misinformation being put out all of these years via Western religion. Okay, the Judeo-Christian religions. Um, but when you study, you start to really understand, you know, the true information from the misinformation. Okay, so that is pretty much all I wanted to build on from this book. So here's the book again, The Necromenon by Michael W. Ford, Egyptian Satanic Magic. All right. So pick this book up. Um, that's pretty much all I wanted to build from this book on. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the content. Continue to listen to the podcast, the Tunnel Vision Podcast, on Spotify and all other major podcast platforms. And of course, is here on YouTube as well. Okay, so you can listen here also. All right. That's pretty much all that I had for this particular discussion. Okay, and I will talk to you all on the next one. Peace.